What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, and I'm about to head out for vacation this afternoon, but I wanted to make a video real quick on a report that I found this morning from Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk regarding Las Vegas Raiders running back Josh Jacobs. So if you guys haven't been following lately the NFL headlines, there are a lot of running backs right now around the league that are having contract disputes with their teams. Running backs have been complaining all offseason long that they aren't getting paid enough and that they're undervalued. And they even had like this running back summit where they all got together and talked about the issues regarding the position. And Josh Jacobs is at the forefront of running backs who are trying to get a long-term contract. They're trying to get paid, but they're struggling to come to an agreement with their teams. Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing yards just last season with over 1,600 rushing yards. It wasn't even close. He led the league in rushing yards. He averaged just under 5 yards per carry and was tied 5th with 12 touchdowns. And the Raiders placed what is called a franchise tender on running back Josh Jacobs earlier this offseason. And they placed this franchise tender on him with the idea that they could work something out later, but it would pay him $10.1 million for this season. But so far, Josh Jacobs has not come to camp, and he has not been able to reach an agreement with the Las Vegas Raiders. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk reports that there is a scenario in which the Raiders could rescind the franchise tender on Josh Jacobs, making him a free agent in late August or early September. And on top of this, Florio reports that Josh Jacobs would become a free agent with the intention of heading straight for the Kansas City Chiefs. Here's from the article by Mike Florio. Nearly 3 weeks after the window closed on a long-term deal and nearly 2 weeks after the Raiders opened camp without running back Josh Jacobs, nothing is happening between player and team on a potential one-year deal. The options are limited at this point. 1. Jacobs accepts $10.1 million for one season. 2. Jacobs and the Raiders work out an enhanced deal with more money and or make a promise that he won't be tagged again in 2024. 3. Jacobs skips all or part of the regular season. 4. The Raiders trade Jacobs in his one-year deal. Or 5. The Raiders rescind the franchise tender and he becomes a free agent. Option 5 could still happen. Whether the goal is to get the fans, media on board or to persuade owner Mark Davis that it's the right move to pocket $10.1 million and move on, the Raiders quite possibly are setting the table to plausibly say, well, we've tried everything, let's just let him go. Jacobs, we're told, is aware of the possibility and unconcerned about it. He knows that $10.1 million won't be there if he's suddenly a free agent in late August or early September. But he would still have a plan. He would be inclined to take the best deal he could get from a contending team, starting with the Chiefs. Per a source with knowledge of the situation, the Chiefs and Broncos are among the teams interested in Jacobs. And while the Broncos could be a considerable way from the contender status, they'd be an option at the right price. The Chiefs make the most sense and create the most intrigue. Jacobs would become a new age Marcus Allen, securing freedom from the Raiders and heading straight for their traditional arch rivals. Regardless, Jacobs' strategy is driven not by maximizing his pay in 2023, but by standing on principle. He continues to be upset that the Raiders failed to pick up his fifth-year option and then failed to make him a meaningful offer on a long-term deal after applying the franchise tag. The overriding vibe from the Raiders to Jacobs is that they want to go year to year under the tag, keeping him up to 2 more seasons before he'd hit the open market, with 6 seasons of NFL wear and tear. There's still a chance that he'll be on the market after only 4 years, and that he'll impact the ever-shifting balance among the top-heavy AFC. So this is quite the bombshell report here on a Saturday morning, late in the NFL offseason, when you typically don't get a lot of free agency-related news. But the idea that the league's leading rusher from last season could be a free agent in late August, early September is just mind-blowing to me. And the fact that the leading rusher from last season in the NFL can't get a long-term deal done with his team just speaks to how jacked up the running back market is in the NFL. And there's been a lot of talk all offseason about how our running backs underpaid. Do running backs have the right to complain? And look, I feel bad for the running backs that this is just kind of where the position is headed and how teams don't really value it. But you also can't blame teams for not wanting to dish out big money to running backs. If you look at the last 10 Super Bowl winners, for example, and then look at who their number one running back was, it's not a lot of notable names. Even for the Kansas City Chiefs, they were able to win 2 Super Bowls in the last 5 years with Damian Williams, who is no longer on the team, and Isaiah Pacheco, who is on a dirt cheap rookie contract, and he was a 7th round pick. There's just not a ton of reason to invest in the running back position, especially as these guys continue to get older. And look, Josh Jacobs isn't necessarily old, but he's not necessarily a spring chicken either. And the running back position just gets beat up a lot. That's just the nature of it. And I understand the reserve from the Raiders to pay Josh Jacobs a ton of money. Also, the same thing's going on with Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts right now. Jim Irsay has publicly stated multiple times about how they're not really interested in paying running backs a ton of money. And now Jonathan Taylor has requested a trade. And it's going to be tough to work anything out there because I don't think the Colts are going to move off their stance of not paying Jonathan Taylor. And it's going to be hard for them to find a trade partner because what Jonathan Taylor is going to find out is that there aren't really a bunch of teams that want to pay him either. But that's just a quick little synopsis of where things stand with running backs around the league that are trying to get paid. But back to the Josh Jacobs discussion. It's very rarely that you hear of a guy that has intent to bolt to one particular team if he were to become a free agent. And it's just wild that Mike Florio just came out and said it like, look, Josh Jacobs wants to go to the Chiefs. That's the vibe that I get from this article. That's the vibe that I get from this report, that if Josh Jacobs becomes a free agent, he's not going to be too worried about it. And he already has a team in mind, and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is from Mike Florio, who I know he said some stupid stuff in the past about the Chiefs, and a lot of Chiefs fans aren't a big fan of Mike Florio. But he does have knowledge of things going on around the league. And so the other idea that I get from this report is that if Josh Jacobs were to get released, it wouldn't really be about the money. He wouldn't be seeking another big money deal from another team. He would be looking to make a statement and, like Mike Florio said, stand on his principle, and he would go to a contender on a cheap deal, because if you're going to go to a contender at this point, it's going to be on a cheap deal. And he would go to the Kansas City Chiefs to make a point to the Las Vegas Raiders and have a chance to get back at them next season. He also mentioned the Denver Broncos, but that seems far less likely. He could get more money by going to the Denver Broncos because, as I've mentioned many, many times in recent videos talking about potential acquisitions, the Chiefs don't have a ton of cap space right now. And they would have to free some up by hopefully a Chris Jones extension, which hopefully we'll see soon. But I don't know. That's a separate conversation. So back to the possibility that Josh Jacobs could potentially be on the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a wild development. Now, I'll get to the likelihood of this happening in a second, but let's just take a moment to sit back and really soak in the idea that the Kansas City Chiefs could acquire the NFL's leading rusher from last season on this team. I mean, that would just be crazy. And I do truly believe that Josh Jacobs would want to come to the Kansas City Chiefs. That report was very straightforward in the fact that Josh Jacobs is eyeing the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that is something him and his agent are probably using for leverage. Not saying that it's fake and that they wouldn't go to the Chiefs if he's released, but I think the Raiders would not let this happen. If they knew about this, and they probably do, the last thing that they would do probably is release Josh Jacobs. It's kind of similar to the Rodney Hudson situation from a couple years ago. Back right before the Kansas City Chiefs drafted Creed Humphrey, there were talks of Rodney Hudson getting released, and the Raiders were going to release him. That was reported initially, but then there was rumors that if Rodney Hudson were to get released, he was going to head straight back to the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Raiders were like, no, screw this. we do not want to help out the Chiefs. And so instead, they found a last-second trade partner in the Arizona Cardinals and sent Rodney Hudson to Arizona. And it ended up working out in the end, but the Raiders do not want to help out the Chiefs in any way. And so I kind of see this situation as similar to that, and that's the reason I don't see it happening. I also just think there's a couple more hurdles that would have to be cleared for this to happen. Again, the financials, the Chiefs don't have a ton of cap space. And then I really do think that the Chiefs are happy with their running back room. You know, they brought back Jerick McKinnon, who they really like. He's the perfect number 2. And you don't really want to eat too much into Isaiah Pacheco's snaps. The team really likes Isaiah Pacheco. Now, if they're concerned about Isaiah Pacheco's health, that would be incentive to bring in Josh Jacobs. But even then, we've heard a lot of great things about undrafted free agent Deneric Prince from training camp. And then I still think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be on this team. I'm not a Clyde Edwards-Helaire fan. You guys know that. But the Chiefs aren't getting rid of him because they have no incentive to get rid of him. At least that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong and they'll end up releasing him or trading him somewhere. I don't know. But I just don't really see them getting rid of CEH. I think he rides it out for one more year and then they let him go because then his contract is up. But maybe there's an alternate world where they do get rid of CEH, and if Josh Jacobs were to get released, they bring him in, and then you just have an awesome stable of running backs. But it's just crazy to me, again, that, you know, there is a small possibility that Josh Jacobs, the leading rusher in the NFL, could join the league's #1 offense from last season, the defending Super Bowl champions. But I just kind of wanted to talk about this for a little bit, guys, give you my thoughts, my opinions on this bombshell report from this morning from Mike Florio. But I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on the potential of the Kansas City Chiefs adding Josh Jacobs to their team this late in the offseason, acquiring one of the league's best running backs? And do you think that this is realistic? How realistic? Let me know down in the comments. I want to hear from you guys, as always. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!